your drawings, you draw. I've seen a lot of your artwork on your Facebook. And I know you come from a anime background, and now you're trying to learn how to draw a little bit more into the comic book world.
Right.
Tell me about that.
Okay, so like I said earlier, I grew up with Dragon Ball Z. When I first taught myself how to draw, I think it was like 4. I used to trace Dragon Ball Z pictures just because I really liked them. I was like, oh, cool, yeah, I wanna trace it. I think when I was like 5, when I started school, I think kindergarten, I was able to draw. Like I got tired of drawing the same pictures. Like I want Goku to look like this, so I was able to draw Dragon Ball Z pictures in different poses. It wasn't until I got a little bit older, I think in middle school, when I started drawing my own characters, and in high school when I started developing my personality in terms of when I draw. Like I said earlier, when it comes to video games, I never liked using the generic character. I don't like using Johnson. I like using me. So I always try to put myself, well, not always, but it depends on the subject, but I always like to put myself into that world. For an example, Tron. I love Tron. What would I look like in Tron? What would I wear? What would my story be? As I draw these characters, that kind of comes into play. So what I want to do now is take what I love doing and make it a career. I would love to work for a comic book company or a video game company in character design, or with comic books, I would love to do like pencils. I would love to do the interiors of what you read on comic books. So what I've been doing was I've been looking at my 2 favorite artists. There's Michael Turner, who died, I think before 2009. I think he died, like a year before. And it sucks because I kind of got into his game late. If I picked it up earlier, I probably would have been able to draw his style a little bit better now. So I kind of got into it late, but I really like his style. And then Tyler Kirkman, who currently draws for DC Comics. I think he draws Teen Titans right now. I like both of their styles. So what I'm doing is I'll research their styles. I'll look at some of their pictures. I'll look at some of their artwork. The pencils that they do for their interior comics. I'll pick it up, how they shade, their proportions, their poses. And then usually I draw while I'm at work. So if I'm like on a sticky note, if I'm on like just a random printer paper, I'll draw on that, or I'll sketch something out to practice something different. Like, okay, let me look through some pictures. I really like this picture. I like what he did with shading. Let me draw a character and try to shade the way he did it here. Or a certain character, like for example, girls. I have a struggle drawing girls because I've been so used to drawing guys from Dragon Ball Z, Goku and Trunks and everybody. So drawing girls is a little bit harder for me. It's a little bit easier now, but it's still hard. So what I'll do is I'll look at Michael Turner. Okay, he's got a character, Witchblade. All right, what does her hair look like? How does that flow like in the air? It's a lot different than drawing a guy who usually has short hair. So, I'll sketch it out or I'll draw it out or whatever, and then soon I'm going to start drawing on these really big comic book boards, like this big, where the artists draw it out, and then when they ship it out to go color and everything, then they shrink it down to the comic book size like this. So I'm going to start doing that, and I just big pictures that I have to get used to drawing, because I'm so used to drawing on like sticky pads like this big, or 8 by 8 by 11 printer paper that we used to use at school. So I have to transition from that to these really big boards, and that's really hard for me.
Because of proportions.
Yeah, proportions is a lot different. So I've been studying these techniques so that once I start doing onto these big boards, I can transition a little bit easier. But eventually I want to get to a point where I can get something out and get a portfolio going, and then I could be able to, take it, make it a career. Go to Marvel, go to DC, go to my favorite game company, Ubisoft, go to them, be like, hey, this is what I can do, this is what I would like to do, but, is there an internship, is there a job opening, something. Obviously I'm not going to go like that, I'm going to be more professional about it, but, something like that. Be able to take what I can do, what I love doing, and make a career out of it. And so what I've been doing lately is just, whenever I draw something, I'll put it up on Facebook or Instagram, or I'll put it on Instagram, and it links to my Twitter and my Facebook, and just try to get people's opinions. And I do get a couple likes here and there, and it helps me, because kind of like, okay, they like it. That means I'm getting better, or I'm getting good. I just gotta keep practicing. But now I'm trying to make that push forward to be like, all right, no more practicing. Let's execute it on these big boards. Let's get going. That's what I'm trying to do.
What's the biggest difference between, you used to draw anime, so what's the big difference between like an anime drawing and I guess the style that you're looking for in a comic book drawing? What's the biggest difference?
The biggest difference is proportion. Anime is a little bit bigger in terms of they try to accentuate things more. Like for an example, the one thing with anime versus comics is the eyes. Eyes are bigger in anime, whereas they're a little bit more realistic in comics. And then body parts as well. Obviously, with anime, you have big boobs, very voluptuous women.
Can't go wrong there.
In comics, you can still do it to a point where it's not overly big. You know, you still got to keep it proportional. But with comics, there's a lot more detail in how you do everything. Usually, when you do shading or whatever, when you try to show that there's going to be shading in this portion of the body, it's different how they would do it in anime. Because in anime, they would just do it with color. In comics, you have to, draw, like, the cross-hatching, where, like, you just draw a bunch of lines kind of crossing over, and then, the tighter the lines are, the darker it's supposed to be, and then the wider the lines are, you kind of have, like, that gray value. And that's before they add color and everything, where they can shade it there, but to do it with pencils, it's different how you would do it in anime. That, for me, is one of the biggest differences. That and then the amount of detail. So if I'm wearing a shirt, anime versus comics, with comics it'll be a little more detailed, but you'll show it with your values, with your grayscale. With anime, with color or just a simple, like, just color it in with gray. So it's a little bit different there.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is probably the biggest difference, and it's not challenging so much now because obviously I've been practicing a lot, but that's at the time when I first started, it was a little bit weird because I'm so used to drawing. I was drawing anime from 5 till I was in middle school till I think I was like 12 or 13. Even when I started drawing my own characters, I was still doing anime. I think in high school I started picking up different styles, and so it was transitioning along with what I was doing, but it was still like, for an example, when you're sculpting something, it goes as you go.
Mm-hmm.
It'll get its form and shape and everything as you move along, and that's how it worked for me when I was transitioning from anime to comics. Because as soon as I decided to do comics, I kind of just drop anime straight to comics. So that transition from shading, proportions, everything was hard. That's very challenging, and even now it's still kind of iffy because my finger will still muscle memory will kick in and still want to go anime style. So,
out of the things you've already drawn, what are your favorites
of
of the works you've already produced?
One of my favorite heroes from the DC universe is Green Lantern. It's a specific Green Lantern. There's in comics for storyline reasons.
There's a whole bunch of them.
Yeah, you'll have 3 or 4 heroes that will take up the mantle. For an example, Batman. There's 3 Batmans. Nightwing becomes Batman at one point. With the Green Lanterns, there's the 4 main ones. You have Hal Jordan, Guy Gardner, Jon Stewart, the black guy that everybody knows from Justice League, and then Kyle Rayner. Kyle Rayner is my favorite. I always liked him. So anytime I draw him, I'm usually kind of giddy. I'm like, it's Kyle Rayner. Or when I draw Captain America, who by far among everyone else is my favorite. Whenever I draw Captain, I'm always like, yeah, it's Captain America. So anytime I draw them, I'm always like, yeah, this is dope. But I think for me, it's whenever I draw my own character for my own story, or when I draw, okay, let's say I had a guy who meets the Green Lanterns, and for whatever reason, he has to become a Green Lantern himself. I'll draw what he looks like. That for me is always great. Whenever I draw myself into that world, it's always great. When I started, I think, high school, I used to draw this character who's called Ghost, who's kind of based off me, how I was in middle school. Anytime I draw him, I'm always like, this guy, bam. I always try to make him look the best out of everybody else when I draw. I always try to make sure I get the details right and everything. So I think for me, every time I draw him, every time I draw Ghost, that guy is the character that I'm like, alright. Captain America who? It's Ghost time, baby.